Writers Read by Lit Tracy, getting that book in children's hands.
Hi, I'm Tracy Grice and welcome to the Writers Read podcast. One of the quotes that inspires me in my practice as a teacher, in fact it's the one that sits front and centre of my desk at school, is written by Nancy Atwell, an internationally acclaimed author, and she says that for students of every ability and background, it's the simple, miraculous act of reading a good book that turns them into readers. Because even for the least experienced, most reluctant reader, it's the one good book that changes everything. The job of adults who care about reading is to move heaven and earth to put that book into a child's hands. And that's why this podcast exists. Well, the excitement for Book Week is mounting with the recent announcements of Book of the Year and the Honour Books. Congratulations to all of the authors who have had books nominated for the shortlist and to all of the winning books. Today we hear from Peter Carnavas, whose book The Elephant was shortlisted for the 2018 CBCA Awards. Peter lives with his family in the Sunshine Coast hinterland, just around the corner from a beautiful rainforest and waterfall. He has a dog called Florence and a cat named Harry Potter. We know Peter for his work in writing and illustrating books. However, he's also been a primary school teacher. Peter's books have been shortlisted for many awards, and his books, Blue Whale Blues and My Sister is a Superhero, have both been award winners. Some of Peter's books have also been turned into stage shows, puppet shows, and even a concert featuring orchestral music. Peter's book, Jessica's Box, also appeared on Play School. Today, we turn our attention to Peter's first novel, The Elephant. Let's hear Peter read from his shortlisted book.
So I'm going to read a little part of my book called The Elephant. And The Elephant is about a girl called Olive and an elephant that isn't really there. So Olive lives with two people. She lives with her granddad and her dad, and the elephant follows her dad around. But only Olive can see the elephant, and she wants to chase this elephant away. Now I'm going to read a part of the story which is in the middle of the book, and it's a chapter called The Tree. Now, part of the story is Olive learns about old and wonderful things, and at school she needs to take something for show and tell. It needs to be something old and special, and she at first thinks that she's going to take her jacaranda tree to school because that's old and special, but she knows she can't quite take the tree to school, so she decides she'll do the next best thing, and she'll take some photos of the tree. So this is the little chapter where Olive is taking photos of this beautiful big tree, but then something goes wrong. The tree. Olive stood on the grass and aimed the camera at the jacaranda. If she couldn't take the tree to school, this would be the next best thing. She pressed the button and snapped a photo, then another. She checked the pictures. The tree only just fitted into the frame. It was beautiful, of course, but it looked so small, so far away in that little rectangle on the display screen. She took more photos, close-up shots of the flowers and the speckled trunk. She craned her neck back, looked up, and took pictures of the twisted branches stretching to the sky. She pointed the camera down and captured the gnarly roots that wormed and buckled in the grass, creeping away from the trunk. The colours leapt back at her through the little screen. The green grass, pale brownish trunk, the soft lavender of the flowers. Her face was full of colour too, as she danced around with the camera, capturing the different parts of the great hulking tree, all the beautiful pieces that combined to form this huge thing that towered over the yard. Then she started to climb. If she wanted to show Miss March and the class how big and old and wonderful this tree really was, she would not only have to show them what it looked like, but what it felt like too, to sit in its highest branches and get lost in those velvety clouds of jacaranda flowers. She reached the top of the tree and looked down at the yard. She freed her arms from the branches and held the camera in front of her. A breeze whipped by, the branches shook, and Olive fell. She landed with a thump on the grass, coughed and gasped like a broken-down car. The sky reeled above her, the branches warped. Freddie whimpered and licked her face. then everything went black. Now, I wonder if you know what happened then when everything went black. I should also mention that when Freddie licked her face, Freddie is her little dog. Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Carnavas, and you're listening to the Writers Read podcast.
Now that we've heard an excerpt from The Elephant, let's hear about Peter's life as a reader. Thank you for your time, Pete, and congratulations for your nomination in this year's Children's Book Council Awards for Younger Readers.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So thinking about this Book Week theme of finding your treasure, would you say that books and reading have always been a treasured time for you?
They definitely were when I was young, when I was in primary school. And before I was in primary school, I'm the youngest in my family, so I had big brothers and a sister who taught me to read and write before I got to school, so I was very lucky.
Uh-huh.
And I used to spend a lot of time with books, and not just reading books, but making books from a very young age. So all through primary school, I was into other things as well, but books were something I would always turn to and could occupy me for a long time. When I got a bit older in high school, I sort of forgot about books for quite a few years. I picked up a guitar instead, and that took up all my time.
Uh-huh.
And but then it was just after I left high school, and I wasn't really a reader. A friend of mine handed me a book, and he said, "Oh, you should read this." And I hadn't read a book for a while, and I read the book, and I just fell in love with this author, and I just read everything that the author had written, and then I just haven't stopped reading ever since.
That's a very familiar story for people, that often their earliest years are really treasured times around reading with family. And then something seems to happen in high school often where your reading life perhaps isn't prioritised the same way it was when you were younger. But I often find that for children, it just takes that one book sometimes to either launch or relaunch their life as a reader. So it's just so exciting to hear that story, that you found an author and then voraciously read your way through everything by that person.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that can happen to anybody at any age, whether you're 6 years old or 10 years old or 15 or 30 or 70 or whatever. I think if you feel like you haven't quite found the book yet, it'll be out there somewhere. You just need to find it.
Yeah, and so what would you say for young children who are struggling to find that book? What advice would you give?
Well, I think you need to follow what you're interested in. There's no point just picking up a book and hoping it's going to grab you. I think just browse the bookshelves, and you're not supposed to judge a book by the cover, but that's what we do. Just grab a book, and if it doesn't really get your attention in the first couple of pages, then just try another one. There's no point persisting with a book that isn't exciting you. Mm-hmm. And also talk to other people if you can. Talk to other kids, find out what they're reading, and talk to the people in your school that can help. Librarians are just absolute magicians at that. They can find just the right book for you when you need it. So talk to people around you and people in your school, and they'll usually be able to fish something out of the shelves for you.
Great. And so how do you find your treasure in books? Do you have a recommender that you go to, or do you read reviews? Do you following a particular author? How does it work in your reading life?
Yeah, I do follow certain authors, but I also I read reviews as well. But I tend to like to lose myself in a library or a bookshop, and especially a bookshop, because that's where all the new books are coming out. Mm-hmm. And I get fascinated just by the look of certain books, and I've been known to just buy a book just from the look of it and the feel of it in my hands. But my favourite discoveries over the years are just completely random things where I've just been walking along a library aisle and saw a title in the shelves and took it out, and it's weird how it happens, but sometimes you open that random book and it feels like that author is speaking just to you. It's almost like that book was calling your name, and it sounds a bit silly, but I'm sure there's something more to it. It feels like the author and you just have some sort of a connection, and then you just have to dive into that author's other work as well.
Absolutely. So what treasure do you find in that, other than sort of finding a connection with either the content or the author? What treasures does reading bring to your life?
Well, first of all, I find it relaxing. So relaxing that whenever I start reading, I tend to fall asleep these days.
Uh-huh.
But it's a form of escapism, that old idea of losing yourself in a book. And it doesn't have to be a fantasy adventure book. I lose myself in just seeing the world through somebody else's eyes. And I think that's the other thing that I get really excited about. When we're able to look at the world through a character's eyes that isn't really much like us, we just get a completely new perspective on the world. And I think that's a hugely important thing for children and everybody to be able to do, because if we can see the world from somebody else's perspective, then we can understand them, and more importantly, we can empathize with them. And I think books develop empathy, and I think that's probably their strongest quality.
For sure. And so those treasures that you're sort of pulling out of, your reading experience, does that sort of help direct you where you'll go next with your reading? Does it sort of help to build a bit of a reading path for you, or do you find that you're, as you mentioned, walking down a library aisle, that it could be quite eclectic, something just jumps out at you for a particular or no particular reason?
Yeah, I don't tend to have a plan or follow a path. I tend to jump around. Sometimes I get fixed on certain styles of books, like I might read a whole bunch of sort of verse novels for primary school kids, or I might read a bunch of novels for teenagers. Once I read one, I might read a few more after that. But yeah, I think the truth of the matter is I buy so many secondhand books, and I've got a big pile of them next to my bed, that when I finish one, I just grab another one, and it can be any kind of book. It might be non-fiction, it might be a kid's book, it could be anything.
And so that pile that's by your bed, how does that work for you? Is it whatever's on top you read, or are you thinking about, the way you're feeling in a particular moment, and one book would speak to you more than another?
Yeah, it's often the way I'm feeling at that time. I finished a book the other night, and I looked in my shelf, and I loved the cover of this particular book. It sort of had a cover that slipped. The book slipped into this extra cover as well. I was really excited. I took it out and I started reading it, and I just realised I wasn't going to be able to read it at that point in time. It was just all a bit too heavy and serious for me at the time, so I found something else. So I guess it is influenced by mood. Yeah, and then maybe just what other people have sort of recommended as well.
For sure. So you mentioned you've got a pile of books by your bed. One thing that children are fascinated with is where people read. Would you say that you have a treasured place that you read, or are you a person who just reads, you've got a book with you wherever you go?
I do take books anywhere I'm going where I know I'm going to have a spare 20 minutes or something. I took my daughters to their swimming lesson today. I always take a book with me for that half hour.
Uh-huh.
But at home, I've got two spots I read. I read in bed before I go to sleep, and I usually just read the same 2 pages over that I read the night before, just to remind myself what they were, and then I fall asleep again.
Uh-huh.
So I read in bed, but I also just have a chair with a lamp behind it, and I read there often when everybody else has gone to bed, and I can just have the lamp on and everything's quiet.
And falling asleep reading, I think, is something that a lot of people love to do. So does that influence what you read before you go to bed? Are you obviously not going to read a gripping action adventure?
No, I'll read anything before bed. As I said, I find it so relaxing, and sometimes frustratingly so, because I wanted to keep reading, but I can feel my eyes watering and I start yawning, and I just have to give up and wait till the next day. But yeah, just whatever I'm reading at the time, I'll always read it before I go to sleep.
Well, thank you for sharing your reading life with us, and all the very best for the upcoming announcement for the Younger Readers Book of the Year.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm pretty excited because it's in Brisbane, which isn't too far from me, and I'm taking the whole family.
Oh, fantastic. Well, good luck.
Thank you very much.
I hope you've enjoyed this special episode with Peter Carnavas. I had a great time chatting with him and learning about him as a reader. If you want a QR code for this episode, please drop me a line at tracy@littracy.com. Well, I hope you find your treasure in this year's Book Week celebrations. Happy Book Week, everyone.
Writers Read by Lit Tracy. Getting that book in children's hands. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Writers Read by Lit Tracy, a Dave and the Beanstalk production.